everybody. God damn it! This is every video I've ever done.
Titties.
Titties. 4, 3, 2, 1. Do good, Steve. What's happening, everybody, and welcome back to Drunk Uncle Radio Podcast, where you can see us on YouTube and you can also hear us on your favorite podcast provider. If you like what we're doing, please give us a like, comment, and share. And if you're listening to us on the podcast, please, I don't know, like share it to your like OnlyFans or like Farmers Only. Just give us a shout. And I would now like to welcome the Drunk Uncles, John, Adam, Jimmy. What's happening?
Yeah.
Drunkles, as usual, it is a pleasure to see you.
No doubt, man. I was getting massive FOMO watching you and Jimmy be in the fucking studio last night.
Me too.
That must be nice. Me and Adam were sitting at the house just like, hey, man, remember recording? So what were y'all doing this weekend?
We were working with a young Nashville artist named Jess Jacoy.
She'll be on here sometime.
Yeah,
we should definitely have her on. She's really fun. She's a barrel of laughs and a really good time. But she had some, she just put out a Christmas single called Green and Gold. It's kind of seasonal and it has sort of that wintry feel to it. And we worked at the studio at the Cabin Studio with Brandon Bell and Maddie Alger, and made a really great track out of it. And so she decided she wanted to go back there to do her next EP release, which is going to be probably 4 songs coming out maybe first quarter next year.
We'll definitely get the.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say we'll get the copyright claim on that and make sure we can play it.
There we go.
So you know somebody to call. Okay, so my question right off the bat is, who is happier with the Bob Dylan catalog sell? His 6 children or Universal?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Right?
¿Por qué no los dos?
Yeah. Why can't we have both?
Yeah, no shit.
I was just thinking about this earlier. Like, I've seen a lot of comments online today, like, well, I don't give a damn about this and how much, money he's making. And then there's, a bunch saying that, like, they're mad that he did it. For some reason, like that's going to change
he's 80
quality of the songs or something like that. But first off, whether you're wealthy or not, who's not going to get while the getting's good?
Yeah.
And 2, it's not like the songs are being changed. It's not like any of that's being shit on. Like, having worked for labels that put out re-release after re-release, and even with Rush, I've promoted their 40th anniversary albums, and I'm a nerd. I still buy it all. Like, if I was a huge Bob Dylan fan, like, which I love Bob Dylan, but I'm not like one of his, nuts. I would fucking buy it because I like the art.
Why is that? Dude, I have to say, I feel Jimmy might disagree, but I think it's mine and John's generation has started this shit where like you don't like an artist because you think they quote unquote sold out. Like that was a very 90s thing.
Oh, like that's the grunge-ish all the way. Yeah.
Like I listen to
we're
here Green River.
Right. Meanwhile, here we are. Meanwhile, we're 13 years old and listening to Nirvana on the pop radio station in your podunk town in West Virginia.
Yes, exactly. It's fucking dude.
Well, it's
shit,
like
what do you think, Jimmy?
That's a deep conversation. It's like, what is selling out? Making money, like being successful, having income for your children. What is selling out? Is it like, what's the old Metallica thing? It's like,
Jason Newsted.
We sell out every single show we do. It's like, is that selling out? Like, are you mad that somebody is successful? Because that's what it sounds more like, is that somebody's just mad that they reached the pinnacle.
I don't even say that. I don't even say that about bands like Muse, which I have.
Oh.
I love Muse and I hate the track they're on currently.
Ditto.
I'm not going to say that they're sold out. They're still, the fucking awesomeness is still in there.
Well, that's a little, that's even that English thing where like there's so many bands that, Muse didn't break here until when? Like, John, when do you think
that
Muse
was Uprising?
Uprising, right?
Yeah.
So there was like how many records where they were already selling out Wembley, but they couldn't sell out, America yet.
Yeah, they didn't sell out like Absolution Tour, which was ginormous over in the UK before even landing ashore here.
I think. Go ahead.
No, I was just, one of my good friends that I used to work with at Concord used to work radio with them when he was at Warner, and they're playing stadiums in the UK, and they come over here and they're playing like Billy Bob's Texas. Which
John's or Jimmy's probably played that gig.
Oh yeah, there's like 3 stages in that place.
Mm-hmm.
There's a front, middle, and a back.
So I was thinking, like, man, on my channel that this show is on, I have gotten the reputation as being the drummer that houses Lars Ulrich at every chance that he can get. And I probably am guilty of that. But I think that, like, the Black Album,
isn't that deserved though?
It is. But man, those Metallica simps are fucking strong, dude. You'd think that I stole his toilet paper. Like, man, motherfucker, I've gotten so much hate for that shit. But like, I think the Black Album's selling out because I think that the selling out, like what you were talking about, Jimmy, what is selling out? Like, if you're just doing what you're doing and you just get on a bigger platform, like I remember like people loving, Green Day 1039 Smoothed Out Slappy Hours, which was those 3 EPs. They kind of got them their deal with Dookie, right? And Dookie coming out and all these people who read zines, like if you remember, Korn zine and that kind of shit. People be like, Green Day, you sold out. It's like, dude, they sound exactly the same. Like that. They didn't change.
Well, and I feel like a lot of times sorry, Adam, I cut you off.
No.
I feel like a lot of times people say that they say that so you're a fledgling band. You're doing that. Green Day's a great example. You're a fledgling band. You're doing your art however you see fit to do your art, and then someone gives you some money to do that art, that money you didn't have before, and suddenly you go into a much nicer, like you're not in a basement with a Fostex 4-track anymore, and you're in a recording studio with a real engineer and equipment, and all of a sudden it sounds better, and that it's all part of the cycle of up. And I think a lot of people miscue that as selling out when really it's just getting better.
Man, well, it's like how many of those hippies in the field at Woodstock wound up as orthodontists? It's like who's a sellout to who? Like, what is anybody even doing?
I think the best example of voluntarily selling out and even owning up to it was when Kiss put out Dynasty in 1979.
Was that the disco record?
The disco
I Was Made for Loving You. It was their first #1 hit.
Well, here's the thing about Kiss is they've made no qualms.
No.
What's the quote? All bands wanted to be the Beatles, but Kiss wanted to be Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Man, I feel like as far as like Bob Dylan's concerned, it was very, very smart of him in that, like, he is still Bob Dylan. He's still here. He's still on this earth. So now it's not like, let's say Bob Dylan passed and then it's up to his kids or up to his grandkids or somebody to try to sell that catalog to somebody, because they're not going to have the kind of leverage that Bob Dylan himself would have, because he's Bob Dylan, and he's still here. He can do it. And so he cemented a financial security for his family, as long as it's used wisely. He cemented what should be for generations. Who doesn't want to do that for their kids and their grandkids?
It's people that not thinking that in those terms, that like are early 20s and don't have children and don't think about their parents, and they don't think that way.
I mean, if I could do that, like with my music, that would be like, that's the dream, isn't it? Isn't that what you want to do? You want to set the generations that you'll never know up for
it's kind of like cashing in bars of gold you've been saving.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like I don't know why. I wasn't mad, but like when Rush did this right after their last tour, they sold their entire.
That's catalog. How I knew they were over. That's how I knew that they were.
Yeah,
over.
They sold their entire catalog to what was at the time Olay, which then changed their name to Anthem, which was Rush's old label and management. That's another story, but it was a ginormous amount of money. And I remember at first, because I worked with them, but not for that label, and also as a fan, I was worried. I was like, oh God, what's this new stuff going to look like? And
is Rush going to end up on a Ben and Jerry's commercial?
Yeah, something. I never have to worry about that. But, when I thought about it more, I was like, they got all this money, and if they're not going to tour anymore, they can just enjoy the fruits of their labor. And I think that is the goal.
Now, do you think, because you are definitely clued in more into the business than I think any of us on that side of it, do you think that he still has some control of like,
Yes.
I'm not going to let you put, times they are a change in on a fucking Ben and Jerry's commercial? Do you think?
Well, just like I've where I've worked, continued to work with Rush past that deal. Everything goes through the label that purchased their stuff, and they have all control. They could have like this giant, like taking hundreds of thousands of dollars package drawn up, and all this time invested in marketing, and Getty can just be like, nah, and you have to follow that. So that, I mean, I'm sure that Bob's legal team, very expensive, but they took care of that for him. They're not going to put out, unsolicited, like photos that aren't approved, that kind of thing. That's a huge thing.
It's like people don't remember Bob Dylan at the Newport Jazz Festival. He don't give a fuck. Like that dude not destroyed, but could have destroyed that, voice of a generation, troubadour with a guitar, new Woody Guthrie. Wait, which one's which one? Woody, yeah, shit. Woody Guthrie, voice of the people. And, it's why Levon left when they were getting booed all over the place. This guy's been punk rock forever. He don't give a fuck. And what I was going to say earlier with what Jimmy was saying was, hopefully, if you know anything about the Zappa Family Trust, and man, that ripped the family apart. That was a really gross
to this day.
Just like brothers talking to each other in the press, like really gross thing. And we'll do a Zappa episode eventually, because I am a full-on Zappa freak. But I think it goes to what we're talking about. Dweezil wants to keep playing that music and keep it alive with this amazing band that he's got, and then the other siblings did. It was gross, and this with Bob, he's made sure that that's not going to be a thing. That we're going to have Jacob and Jesse fighting. And that's just, it's that, man, if Frank knew that shit was going on,
oh my God,
he would come back and he'd burn down the utility muffin research kitchen, because that cult of personality celebrity thing was something that he railed against his whole fucking life. And so Bob's made sure that is not. So what do you all think? What about the Bob Dylan? Does anyone know how much it was?
Over 300 million is what they said it probably is. That's all they know. There is no exact number.
I think you're talking more like probably half.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's a great American songbook. So anybody in the comment section, please tell us what you think about the concept of artists selling out, and specifically about Bob Dylan selling his whole catalog to Universal. Am I right?
Yep.
Oh, great. That's a whole other set of songs that I'm not allowed to react on YouTube. Thank you, Universal.
They are slowly but surely becoming Universal.
They really are. Yeah, I'm so sick of getting fucking emails, text from you all. Fuck you, Universal. Okay, so now
I do a lot of work for Universal, so hey.
Oh yeah, sorry. That fuck you was just me, exclusive to me.
I don't have to cut
the opinions expressed in one panel of this particular show do not reflect the opinions of the other 3 panels of this particular show.
It's fair use by the letter of the law. I'm in the right. Law's on my side, Jimmy.
Law's on my side.
I play cards with JD Shellnut.
And so that leads us to our deep dive. The only thing that musicians like saying more than "I swear I'm going to cut back on my drinking this week" is debating music. Beatles versus the Beach Boys, Beatles versus the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin versus Black Sabbath, Metallica versus Megadeth. Anybody got any more?
Fish versus the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, that's what I was saying too.
Yeah, of course.
We're gonna backslide into that a little bit. I don't think it's a good idea.
Monkeys there.
Rush versus Yes. Yep. Primus always wins because they suck.
Sucks.
So we are going to do an episode that if my mother hears, I will not be allowed at Christmas dinner. And we're all songwriters in this room. and we're going to debate and explore and do our best to be respectful as possible on the what I think is the two, and of course everybody's going to have their own version of this, but the two like seminal, you think, acoustic guitar singer songwriters from the 70s, Jim Croce versus James Taylor. John, discuss.
Well, I have some points here that I did some research today.
Is that a clipboard?
I mean, do you not have a clipboard with a few things, some chicken scratch put on it? You know,
I have a wipe off board.
Yeah, I got my blackboard or my whiteboard's right there. It's on the door there. It only has the pen out of my studio snake on it. I mean,
I've got a single sheet of paper.
There you go.
I have an ashtray.
So I'll say this, because I sort of, over the course of my musical maturation, kind of flipped. I listened to a ton of James Taylor when I was a teenager in high school and in college. My mom liked James Taylor, much as I believe your mother, Steve, liked James Taylor. And so, you know, I'm in a house of classical musicians. It's tough to get the rock and roll in there when you're early teens. You know, they're resistant to it a little bit. It's a little too loud for them. James Taylor and the Eagles, which that's another entirely different episode. James Taylor was allowed because he's soft and nice, and polite and palatable. And
he would put the seat down. He would put the seat down in the back.
Exactly. So I spent a lot of time listening to James Taylor when I was a kid. I really wore that stuff out. Especially I had one of his like greatest hits live that was killing band, slamming good record for
Russ Kunkel on drums, man. That band was fucking killing. Who was the bass player, Jim?
Lee Sklar.
Yeah, Lee Sklar playing bass. Yep.
That's how that whole group got their start.
Oh, really? Russ Kunkel,
James Taylor.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So I thought very highly of James Taylor, and then as the years went by, and I learned a lot more about like heart, soul, passion,
Grease,
intensity. Yeah, Grease, exactly. I started to and you know, now that I know what I know about the differences in the upbringings and the backgrounds of those two writers, I mean, you listen to Jim Croce for 30 seconds and whoop, there it is.
I hope I'm not cutting you off, John.
No. That was the end of my thought.
I was raised in a household that listened to both equally almost. I think if you ask my dad, he would probably say that Jim is more of a favorite than his love for James, which is kind of funny when you think about it. But some of my favorite memories from childhood are riding to the lake, going to fish with Dad, and blaring Bad Leroy Brown and Rapid Roy and all those tunes. And there's so much more Grease there with Jim. I love, you can't deny that James Taylor's good songwriter and he's had a lot of greats, but there's like a, and I'm sorry, the Belmont student writer, and you have like somebody who's lived through the shit.
Jim Croce has that subtle tongue-in-cheek, quirky writer's humor that like John Prine, Todd Snyder, that snarkiness,
irreverence.
Yeah. And James Taylor doesn't have a fucking drop.
That's right. Like the undiscovered Howard Hughes line and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a good line. We're gonna hear that later. Yeah. Adam, this is what I like. Music is such a beautiful bridge to better and cooler friendships. Me and Adam in this circle are probably the cats that listen to probably the heaviest. I know that everybody listens heavy, but I think me and Adam are kind of the ones like, hey man, you fucking, that new Lamb of God is the shit.
I'm just talking about Code Orange.
Dude, I gotta pick that up. If it's like Helmet, you're speaking my language. Because those first two, Helmet, Betty, and fucking Aftertaste is even good.
It's like landing on
meantime-
Omaha Beach.
Dude, talk to me. But me and Adam, of course, are Rush fans. But then, like, one day, it was a complete stepbrother situation when you brought up us recording. And later on, please stick around because you're going to hear the Drunk Uncles, which will become the band that never was, Slate Dump, actually do a Jim Croce song. Adam was like, dude, we should do a Jim Croce song. And I was like, did we just become best friends? Because I had no idea that you were a Jim Croce fan, because we just always talked about how, like, you know, the newest Metallica record sucked.
Yeah.
Jimmy, I know I can't wait to hear your juxtaposition of Jim Croce and James Taylor.
Man, it's complicated to me. Like,
It is.
they're two totally different guys, and you have that thing where James Taylor is still here. He's gotten to be around for a long time and develop and change and do what he wanted. And Jim was just starting. Like, he had his first number one. Bad Bad Leroy Brown was number one in July of 73, and he was dead September 20th of 73.
And he never heard his last album come out.
With doesn't the last record have I Got a Name on it too?
Yeah, that is the last record. I Got a Name.
Fuck.
And you know, they're
15 months.
They
Crazy.
come from two totally different backgrounds, you know. I mean, James Taylor came from, you know, I guess for lack of better terms, he was like an old money from the South kind of family that was up north. His dad was dean of the medical school of the University of North Carolina. He was in Operation Deep Freeze in Antarctica. His dad's a super fascinating guy.
Really?
You know, came from this old money Scottish family in North Carolina around Montcastle, I think. Went to New York, you know, had his heroin problems and all of that. And
How did he like didn't James Taylor, wasn't he a cokehead too?
I mean, I don't know. I know he had heroin troubles
Just calling
two
it
separate times, I think. Like, one time was in New York when he was living in Greenwich Village, and things were kind of just starting to fall apart, and his dad went up and got him and drove him back, and he needed like a vocal cord surgery or something. And
His music is so normie to be a heroin addict.
Yeah.
well, and then he had trouble. Well, I mean, but it's like it's there though. Like Fire and Rain, you know, wonderful song. I mean, it's about him dealing with his, at least according to him, about him dealing with how he dealt with his drug habit and also the suicide of one of his very close friends. You know, and that's the woman in the story,
Yeah.
and you know, of loss and all that. It's a pretty deep song, and he is a very special talent. And I, you know, I wasn't like, I grew up listening to both, like Adam did. Like we had a lot of Jim Croce around, we had a lot of James Taylor around. So I grew up listening to them both, and I always kind of consider myself more of a Croce guy, just sort of in the bass elements, where there's parts of both of them. Like, I'll prefer one over the other for different reasons, but like James has, when you just listen, I never was all that super keen on James Taylor band recordings, the early stuff. As it went further on, like I kind of prefer like the Mexico recordings and stuff like that, which some people think cheesy
that's
as
a
hell.
great recording.
But I thought those records sound better than a lot of the early stuff. And I never really liked like Fire and Rain and some of that stuff, like the recordings. But then when you hear him sit and sing it by himself with a guitar, it's a totally different story. And then you can see like this dude is he's got the ish, you know, he's a magical performer. But I mean, to move to Jim, Jim's like that kind of working class. He's a second generation immigrant. His family was from Sicily.
He's the ultimate working class hero.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was Roman Catholic. He wasn't Protestant. He went to I think a Catholic prep school. It was on the Villanova campus, and then wound up going to Villanova. You know, pretty similar to James in some ways, where they were both sort of, it's at least in my research, it seemed like they were both sort of like dreamery types. So they didn't take certain things so seriously. Like, I mean, I'm probably like all of us, you know, we're musicians. There's certain things you don't take as seriously. And then you kind of drift a little bit. And he also wound up in New York, and New
York's not my home.
Yeah. Well, and also another thing about Jim Croce is he converted to Judaism for his fiance, who became wife, Ingrid. She's Jewish, and he converted for her. And so, converting from Roman Catholic to Jewish, you know, that's a big step. It's a big deal. and they moved to New York, and they travel hundreds of thousands of miles in touring as a duo.
And their duo shit is great.
It's
but wait, him and his
wonderful.
wife?
Yeah, him and his wife.
Jim
yeah.
and Ingrid Croce. That was
I've
their
never
first
heard
album.
any of that.
It's
I consider
great.
myself a pretty big Jim Croce fan, and
The
I don't know
best-
anything about that.
I think one of the best tracks they did was "The Way We Used to Do." It's a
Mhm.
great song.
Man, well, his first like kind of album. There's only like 500 copies of it. His parents gave them $500 as a wedding gift, and it was so that he could make a record. And in their mind, according to the story, was like, okay, so it's a second generation immigrant family. It's like he's the oldest, so we need him to get a good education and prop up the rest of the family. Very base, fundamental, like American kind of attitude. And so he's got this music thing. We're going to support that. We're going to give him the money to do it, and we're going to let him put out a record, and then it's going to be out of his system, and then he can go on and use this Villanova education for a better job. The problem was he sold like all 500 copies of this record, and then he and Ingrid get this thing with Capitol Records, and then they tour hundreds of thousands of miles, but he hates it. He becomes very disillusioned with the whole business. And I mean, my favorite Jim Croce song came out of his New York Is Not My Home. That's my favorite Jim Croce song because it's so identifiable with everybody. Just like a feeling misplaced.
And it's like that. It's always been one of my favorite drum sounds.
Oh yeah.
That with the brushes, like, and I'm not even a drummer, but when that kicks in, it's just like I remember sitting in the front seat of my dad's work truck, just like riding down a country road. It's very cliche and stupid sounding, but
no, man, that's music. Welcome to That's What Music Does. Music is a trigger. Something we're going to talk about next week for our Christmas episode. Everybody, please tune in because we're going to see us do a bunch of Christmas songs with the slate dump, if you will, with a special guest. Man, that's what music. When music is doing that, it's operating on its highest level.
And that's a feeling. And then, like, I totally agree. But that's a feeling. Like what I knew that I was much more of a Croce fan than a Taylor fan, because James Taylor, while I love his songs and don't think bad of him or anything, it just doesn't trigger those like vivid color wheel moments,
I think it's like it's part of, not to like beat the door down on like the background thing, but I think it's just representative of their art. Like James Taylor to me is sort of like, it's a high art of songwriting. It's wonderful craftsmanship. He sings wonderfully. He writes beautiful, beautiful songs. They're not like greasy necessarily. They're pretty straight. They're pretty straight ahead. They're not very greasy, but they're really well crafted. It's it's a study in songwriting. And then Jim Croce is like, he's the working class, just grease. It's just like that greasy, gritty kind of sadness. That's not so eloquent necessarily. It is, but it isn't. And like it doesn't seem like it is on its surface, but it is.
I think one of the best examples would be like, could you ever hear James Taylor singing Speedball Tucker?
Oh no!
I drove a boat down rig, maybe I'm tight. Like, no.
I will say though, James Taylor, I think if he were living in Nashville today and there was James Taylor today, he could have made a mint. Mm-hmm. I mean, not that he hasn't made a mint, but he could have done it in a different way. And that, like, I mean, I love.
He'll be the next guy selling his catalog for
for beaucoup.
Oh man, well, I mean, like Bartender's Blues is a fucking great song, and it was so good that George Jones decided he was going to do it, and he did an even better version than James did. It's a great song. It's a wonderful song, and it showed that James Taylor was also multifaceted. And I think that's the thing that bums me out, is I think Jim Croce was just as multifaceted, but he just never got the opportunity. We don't know what Jim Croce could have wound up being, but we know what James Taylor has been. And so it's hard to equate the two in a lot of ways.
Not just Jim. Like Jim had one of the best guitarists with him.
Oh yeah.
And he was the youngest guy.
Man, I went on a deep dive, in research for this, and I could not find a recording of Jim Croce with a full band.
They didn't. I don't think he did a lot of it live. It was just him and Melhausen. Because
and talk about him. What's his whole name?
Maury Melhausen, I believe.
Yeah.
And when they initially met, I believe it was like around 1970. He was like, Melhausen was kind of the songwriter, and Jim was just kind of like playing some guitar and singing harmonies and stuff with him. And then as time went on, they kind of figured out that, like, Jesus Christ, Jim's like a fucking incredible songwriter, and Melhausen's the great guitar player. Maybe we ought to flip this thing, and maybe I support him. But yeah, brilliant guitar player. But they were doing that was the thing. Like, Jim Croce was still so new to the scene. He'd been around as long as James did, but James had the Apple deal, on the Beatles label. First non-British dude on that. Actually, it's Paul McCartney and George Harrison are on Carolina on My Mind, and George Harrison's not credited. But he just, like, they were still doing colleges and comedy clubs and just acoustic shows. He hadn't had the chance to have that big run up. He'd been on American Bandstand.
He was on SNL.
Yeah, SNL, stuff like that. Like, he'd done those like band shows, but he hadn't had the chance to really, play his hand the way that he could have. And that's, Jim Croce's such a big what if. And that's why I said, like I said a second ago, it's so hard to equate the two, because you don't know what Jim Croce had.
You just imagine if Jim.
Well, those verses, the debates that we all have is always it's an era thing. You know what I mean? They just happen to be the two guitar playing troubadour, singer, songwriter type guys at the same time, and they were. I think, Jimmy, what do you think about this? I think of it because I want to talk about my journey to this Jim James thing. Like, James Taylor always felt like he was, because he was super good looking when he was younger. I know a lot of people just now kind of think of him as like kind of bald, pop-all looking dude.
Still that mustache.
He was like the fucking quarterback that got all the girls and probably drove like a Corvette. And Jim Croce came across like the guy that was,
in the C10. He's like
yes,
in the C10,
and it was all different.
Running rich.
Yeah, and he was, smoking behind the band room.
Had like 12 bags of Quikrete in the back.
Yeah, that's what it always felt like. So here's where I've come with this. And if you've ever been with me at a certain bar late night and one of them comes on the jukebox, you've heard this drunken rant. When Mom, I'm sorry. When I was a kid, I love you, Big Liz, but Mom, my dad listened to like outlaw country and traditional country music, and Jim Croce, and then like Allman Brothers, George Jones, that. Jerry Jeff Walker. And then my mom listened to the Eagles, James Taylor, and Leo Sayer. And I just remember being a kid and being like, I can't wait till Dad gets the record player, like when it's turn. Because I've listened to maybe it's like a greatest hits, Jim Croce on 8-track. And it's same thing with you, Adam, and my dad's 78 Ford Blue Bronco, going up White Oak. And dude, it just always, even as a kid, I thought like, this feels real to me. And I didn't know shit about songwriting. I was barely a drummer. I wasn't a musician. I was just a dude listening. And I always just like, Jim has this just visceral, if you're open to hear it, he has this visceral, beautiful, like blue collar heartache and struggle. And James Taylor, who's equally great, of course, all those songs are great. But that's where this whole episode really came from. That and a reason to do this video that we're about to drop. That's how I've always thought of it.
Well,
and it might even have been.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say it might even have been just because I was biased because I hated the Eagles and my mom listened to that fucking Eagles best of. And man, all I wanted to do was hear Dad put on Jim Croce or Hank Williams Jr. Pressure Is On. And then I had to hear, then I'd hear America. So my mom was the ultimate 70s demo of, light 70s good boys and girls doing
easy
what's right.
listening.
That's my mom. My mom too. I think.
Oh, really?
We had
Fleetwood
this-
Mac, dude. I can't listen to Rumors ever again.
I remember when Jimmy and I were in college, my mom, you got in my car this one day, Jimmy, and I was like, my mom burned me this CD.
Oh, I remember this.
She thinks I'd really like it, and I
Oh no.
I put it in. It's Chino Vanelli.
It's Gino Vanilla.
Oh man. Man,
And I'm
what's
What the fuck is this? We got to Jimmy's dorm, and I like some dorm room doors had like a little pouch on the outside if somebody needed to leave a letter or something. Just slipped it in some dude's fucking.
Oh man, I got a
God.
sweet ass mix CD. What is
What
that?
the hell is
Sweet
that?
ass Gino Vanelli, the heat coming. So now we would like to interrupt this program. And as we always say around here, the radio won't play our songs, but we will. This is a quarantine jam that we have done together. I tell you what, Adam, set this up. This is you, baby.
Working at the Car Wash Blues is one of my all-time favorite songs from Jim Croce, and like most of the rest of his songs, this one probably brings back the strongest memories of fishing trips or whatever with my dad and shouting this song like down the road and him acting out the whole "Hey now, mama, come on over here," like a dad does. That's why I love it so much.
So yeah, this was Adam's idea, and if you all keep watching, you're going to see more of us playing our instruments, because we're not just jibber jabber artists, we're also artists. And this is our resident Jim, singing and playing guitar, right?
Hey no, mama, come on over here.
And then Adam is playing bass. I'm of course playing drums, and John is playing 17 other instruments. What else did you play on this?
We got some acoustic guitar for the little noodly noodles. We have some jazz theremin through 7 chorus pedals. We have a little slide steel, lap steel guitar, electric just for some fun chunky country stuff. And I think I'm gonna leave the organ in there. We don't have a string section like the original one did with all that funky choppy fiddle stuff, and so I'm gonna call upon the symphony and a keyboard and have the organ take us home.
Of course, this is produced and directed. The music produced by John, and the videos directed by Adam. And here is, now we're not the drunk uncles when we get behind our instruments, son. When we get behind the instruments, we become the band that never was. Here is Slate Dump singing and playing Car Wash Blues.
I had just got out of the county prison doing 90 days for non-support, trying to find me an executive position, but no matter how smooth I talk, they wouldn't listen to the fact that I was a genius. The man said, we got all that we can use. I got them steadily depressing, low down mind messing, working at the car wash blues. Yeah, I should be sitting in a now-con desk at an office in a swivel chair, talking trash with the secretary, saying, "Hey, mama, come on over here." Instead, I'm stuck here scrubbing these fenders with a rag and walking on my sawgale shoes. Now I got them steadily depressing, low down mind messing, working at the car wash blues. Yeah, man. You should be smoking on a big cigar, but until I get myself straight, I guess I'll just have to wait in a rubber suit rubbing these cars. Well, now all I can do is to shake my head. Yeah, you might not believe that it's true. For working at this end of Niagara Falls is an undiscovered Howard Hughes. So baby, don't expect to see me no double martini on some eyebrow society news. Yeah, I got them steadily depressing, low down mind messing, working at the car wash blues.
So there you go. You're going to hear a lot more of us singing and playing. If you enjoy all that, again, please help us feed the algorithm. Help us with a like, a comment, and a share. We will appreciate you. John, you have something about our juxtaposition today. I don't want to say verses. That just sounds too meathead, but we're going to do a lot more of these. Also in the comment section, if you have any I'm going to do this so you can cut this, Adam. I do this when I do my videos. Suggestions for our comments, please hit us up, because we'll try to get to them. So John, go ahead, brother.
On the subject of I guess it's funny, it kind of comes back to the earlier point we made a little bit about selling out, and what does that mean? What all does that entail? We still have James Taylor. We've referenced this. What would have become with Croce, we don't know. James Taylor did not write all of those songs.
I didn't know that.
To my knowledge, and I did a modicum of research today.
Say deep dive.
A deep dive of research today. James Taylor had he had the New York songwriting machine behind.
Was that
him.
Tin Pan Alley? Is that what I'm? Is that right?
It was Carol Kay and just all sorts of stuff. And so it was not. He had the reason. I think some of the reason it sounds so polished is because it's so fucking polished.
It's coming from the elite.
It's coming from the machine.
The machine, there you go.
And Croce, self-stated, was not into that whole thing. Didn't like the record business. Didn't like all of the BS that goes on.
Touring.
But yeah, didn't like any of that stuff. Didn't like we mentioned. Didn't tour with large bands. That sort of thing. And so, who knows what would have? Who knows what Croce could have become if? And I don't even know that it would have happened if he had gotten a little deeper, a little longer in the system, a little longer in the business. He might have just quit and walked away. Who knows? But
he did once, didn't he, Jimmy? Didn't he have a start stop?
He did. Well, and after he passed, Ingrid had gotten a letter after he passed that he'd written that said that he just kind of wanted to get out of the business again and get into like script writing and that sort of thing. He was, I don't know if that disillusionment was starting to come back.
It was it was like a journal he had on the road with him.
Is that published?
Yeah.
Ooh, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know. Like, I didn't, as a lifelong Kurt Cobain fan, I felt gross reading through his. Yeah,
that's weird.
Look, guys, if I die, don't let that shit out. Don't let anybody watch my shit, man.
But anyway, the point being, had he lived, and even if he was disillusioned with how his career was going, the sky's the limit as to who he could have met. That who knows, he met some other muse besides Maury who drew a different side of him out and is a songwriting partner or a partner in crime and that sort of thing. Who knows what we would have gotten out of him? We'll never know, and we may never have heard Jim Croce's best song.
That's fucking depressing. So John, I have here's go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say my last thing was right along with John's, like something I've always wondered, like, what if Jim had been around for a while longer and then you see him start like collaborating with somebody like John Prine.
Yeah.
I have this thing, and this is gonna bring you back, John. I think, and this will be kind of metaphysical. And and I'm not a spiritual guy, but I think there are just some people that burn so bright and so hard that they don't have a chance. It's the Jeff Buckley thing. Mm-hmm. Like, that's how much Jim Croce means to me. Like, I connect with his songs, like, more than just about anybody that I've ever listened to. And like, you could just hear, like, it's that whole what is Hound Dogs on My Trail type thing. Like, he felt to me like he wasn't long for this world because he just burned really, really bright. I say that about Jeff Buckley. If you watch this channel on YouTube, I've said multiple occasions that Jeff Buckley's Grace is the greatest record of all time. And if you now go back and listen to it, be like, oh, this motherfucker knew he wasn't going to be around for a long time. It feels that way.
Now you can hear how limited you can hear that he knows that even if it's subconsciously, that he knows that his time is not long.
And that Jim has that same feel. So John, you are our resident, airplane specialist. That's one thing that, if you get to know us, John loves airplanes. He's like a 12-year-old when it comes to airplanes. It's great. Like if you want to get John a Christmas present, just get him like a model of what's your all-time favorite airplane, John?
Oh God, you asked me too fast.
Oh, come on.
It's probably,
can I guess?
it's sure you can guess.
P-51 Mustang.
The first.
It's not a warbird, although it functioned as a warbird. My all-time favorite aircraft is the greatest aircraft that ever existed.
DC-10.
It's the DC-3. It's the airplane it's the airplane that changed the face of the entire world. It is the aircraft that made air travel what it is today.
Isn't that the cav amp design?
No, the cav amp design is the front of a B-29. That's a warbird. That's right. No.
And what they're talking about, the Cav amp design, is another thing that John Cavendish does. Is he is an amp maker in Nashville. So if you're looking for an amp, plug, that is basically a Leslie in a portable box. Look up Cav amps online. So John, tell us about the just another man. Musicians should never fucking fly.
God, like how many, especially really good ones. Yeah.
Right. Jesus Christ. It's that Bill Hicks joke that I'm not going to say here. John, tell us about it, John.
So it's a Beechcraft 18. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous aircraft. Really Art Deco styling.
Is that like a puddle jumper type thing?
Kind of. It's probably 7-8 passengers kitted out, but actually maybe 10 kitted out. It's not a little tiny high wing like Cessna like we think of today. It was a twin engine medium sized aircraft. They were taken off from Nacogdoches Airport in Mississippi,
Louisiana.
Yeah. And they're taken off at night. They're taken off into fog. There's some speculation they were feeling like they were being pursued. There was marijuana found at the crash site, although ultimately the investigation ruled that was not a factor in the crash. They do believe the pilot may have been drinking. He also had heart problems and had recently run either a park marathon or a race of some sort, had run for a long distance. Yeah, right. Exactly. And he, for whatever reason, he took off downwind, which is a big no-no for the most part in the aviation industry. Airplanes like to have wind pointing at the front of them. That's just, they're designed to I mean, think about it. When an airplane moves through the air. Yeah. And so he was taken off with the wind at his back, which is just a no-no in broad daylight, clear, calm conditions. And he did it at night. And he managed to strike one of his wings into literally the only tree within shot of the airfield. The report said they didn't get much above 30 feet. And the airplane, you're done. Altitude is your friend. If something happens that low to the ground, you're done. So the airplane flipped. The pilot was ejected, and everybody else stayed with it, and everyone perished instantly.
It's the second day the music died, and there's been 4 or 5 since then, right? If you think about SRV, he was taken too soon, and what's the biggest fucking bummer about it is he had just, in my opinion, recorded his best record.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, man, I've Got a Name is a goddamn masterpiece. It's a fucking masterpiece. And I tried to I went everywhere. I went on Venmo. I went on Daily Motion. I could not find him playing that song with a live band. There is a video of him and the guitar player, which I can't remember his name ever, and a piano player that's doing it, but it just doesn't have that whole, and I don't even know all the answer, the players on that record either.
With that record, like the piano did come in more to play. He had like songs like Top Hat Bar and Grill. It's that big, like swingy kind of, it just sucks that he never got to tour that.
If Jim would have been around, it would have been him on that West Wing episode and not James Taylor.
Hell yes.
I'm fucking Aaron Sorkin would have definitely preferred Jim Croce.
He knows what's up.
He does. So in finale, fellas, we hope that we have honored Jim Croce, James Taylor, I hear you. Jimmy, go ahead, brother.
Well, I guess I try to wrap it up by saying, I don't like to necessarily pick between one or the other because I feel differently about them. But if somebody, held a knife to my head or something and said, "You'll never get fried rainbow trout again if you don't answer," which one do you prefer, James Taylor or Jim Croce?
Rainbow trout.
All I could say was, like, if I wanted to hear a great song, or if I wanted to listen to a great song, I'd listen to James Taylor. If I wanted to feel a great song, I'd listen to Jim Croce.
So there you go. The newest episode, Drunk Uncle Radio. Please go on to our Twitter and our Instagram. Go find us there. We are constantly trying to entertain you on those platforms as well. Please go check out Brother John's new single, Viola. We have in the description all of our channels. Please go check that out. And Jim Croce, man, thanks for the tunes, brother. We'll see y'all next time.
Cheers.